rich kid that no one understands. Mom and Dad and Vicky always giving him commands. Doom and gloom up in his room is broken instantly. Eyes magic little fish who grant his every wish, cause in reality they are parents, fairly odd parents. They let you live when you were a kid with fairly odd parents.
Yeah, right.
He's a phantom.
Danny Phantom. He's gonna catch 'em all 'cause he's Danny Phantom. He's gonna catch 'em all 'cause he's Danny Phantom. He's gonna catch 'em all 'cause he's Danny Phantom.
When bad guys got too rough, he went to work for Tough. And now he's doing secret agent stuff. He's a tough puppy.
B-U-N-S-E-N, Bunsen is a beast.
Not a bear and not a yeti.
Daddy likes to eat spaghetti. Holy heck, that's just confetti. Bunsen is a beast.
Please welcome Butch Hartman.
Well, thank you so much. Those are all great projects, and my daughter and I would watch all of those all the time.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah. And how did the two of you know each other?
David and I?
Yes.
Actually, it's funny, I know Edie as well.
Oh, do you really?
Check this out. So Bunsen Is A Beast, the last show you just saw, whenever you do a show, you have to make a theme song. I've written all my own theme songs. If you are a show creator out there and you want to make your own show, get the theme song. Make sure you write your own theme song, because every couple of months a little check shows up in the mail and you get extra money. So make sure that you, but I've never written a song. Learn how to write a song. So I wrote all my own theme songs. Anyway, when we did Bunsen, I was like, I want a bunch of kids to sing Bunsen Is A Beast. I thought it was really fun. And so I told my composer, Guy Moon, who's a wonderful guy, I said, hey, his name is Guy, he's a guy. Anyway, he got these kids to sing the song. So I show up that day at the recording studio, and there's these wonderful kids singing, and they're being conducted by this lady right here. She was the conductor of the, and I haven't seen her since that day, so it's a reunion. And then this young man here, I know this man because when I was doing Fairly Odd Parents back at Nickelodeon, I sold Fairly Odd Parents as a pilot in December of 1997, the same month that my daughter Sophia over there was born. Where's Sophia? Sophia is the exact same age as the Fairly Odd Parents. There's my other daughter Carly, and there's my wife Julianne over there. Wave your hand there. Dave and I both have wives named Julie, because it's so law in Hollywood, you have to have a wife named Julie. But no, I was working on Fairly Odd Parents, and we were making the pilot for Fairly Odd Parents, and that's a whole process in itself. But once the pilot was made, then they decided to pick up the show. David was working as the assistant to the executive who was running Fairly Odd Parents at the time. And here's a very huge lesson for all of you in Hollywood. Be nice to everyone you encounter. David was, and I'm just going to say this very blatantly, David was someone's assistant. And he was the nicest guy in the world, and I was a pretty nice guy. We just got along. Thankfully, I was nice to him, because David now is a guy who makes decisions on whether you buy shows or not. So, hi David, how's it going, buddy? No, but really, you guys better be nice to people, because there's going to be a time. I used to have intern lunches. Where's the young man who was an intern at Nickelodeon? Where's this young man over here? Amazing worship, by the way, sir. Well done. Beautifully done. But this young man over here, whenever we'd have interns come into Nickelodeon, they'd all want to have lunch with me. But there were like 40 of them. So instead of having 40 lunches, I would have one big lunch, and I would always have lunch brought in, and we'd talk. And I'd say, before I say anything, I just want to let you guys know, be nice to each other. And be nice to everyone you encounter, because you're not a genius, no matter what anybody told you. You might be smarter than a lot of people and very creative, but make sure you're nice, because it's a very small industry, very small, and your name will get around very quickly, and people will know if that's the person they want to work with, like you were saying about the pitching and all that stuff. And we're done with the story.
You don't have a political science degree, do you?
No, I don't.
No, you actually went to an animation program, right?
I did. I'm from Michigan originally, and which is near Canada. Yeah, near Canada. But it's not Canada. I want to stress that very quickly. I came from Michigan, and I came to California in 1983 as an 18-year-old. I got out of high school, came right to California. I went to a school called Cal Arts. Anybody ever heard of Cal Arts? As an animator, and I just kind of dove in head first, wanted to be an animator, came out here. Back in the day, we had to send resumes and portfolios through the mail. Who's ever heard of the mail? Who knows what that is? Mail is, you had to put things in an envelope and look into the, anyway, you had to put things. And I had to send my portfolio into Cal Arts, and I got chosen to come out here and came to California. My first day at art school was like, oh, I overlooked the pool. Cal Arts has a pool. My dorm room was like, wow, there's a pool, hanging up my clothes. Oh, there's people out there hanging up my clothes. Oh, everyone's naked. Wow, this is wow, it's art school. So it was a wild school I went to. But again, you've got to be ready for those things. And but I went through 3 years of Cal Arts, making films, and couldn't afford my 4th year. And then I realized you don't need a degree to get into animation. And so I was like, well, I spent 3 years in school. So I got out of school and I ended up getting jobs in animation. Anywhere I got into, I always wanted to be a Disney animator, but I became a TV animator. I went into television because it was easier to get into, number one, and number two, it was a more steady paycheck. And I got to tell more stories. But TV, you tell a story a week. Movies, you tell one story every 4 years. And I wanted to tell more stories, so I got to become a writer. Everybody out there is an artist. If you're an artist, become a writer as well. I always tell everybody out there, if you're an artist, learn how to write. But I've never written before, start learning. Because you know what, you become more valuable and more indispensable. The more you can up your skill set, make your skill set better. That's why when I got a chance to pitch Fairly Odd Parents, I wasn't just an artist, I was a storyboard guy, I was a creator, I was a writer, I could write my own scripts. Because there's going to come a time where someone drops the ball and you've got to pick it up. And if someone's script isn't ready for Friday when it's due, you have to write it, you better be ready to do that. And your vision has to be the strongest one on the show if you're the creator as well.
Now, you were an animator at Hanna-Barbera?
I wasn't an animator, I was a character designer, and because contrary to popular belief, Hanna-Barbera didn't do much animation in the 90s when I got there. All their animation was done overseas. But I was hired as an artist on a show called Droopy, Master Detective, and Tom and Jerry Kids. Yeah, and basically what you would do is like you'd get a list, here are all the props needed for this week's show. We need a ham sandwich, we need a crowbar, we need a bulldog. And you're like, okay, so I would just sit there and draw everything on the list all week. And then got tired of doing that. I'd have a week's worth of work, I'd get it done in 2 hours, and I would read books all week. And then I would create my own cartoons. I would just start making my own stuff up, and then next Monday would roll around. And so, but through that, I learned all the pieces of a show before I got my own show. You know what I mean? So that helped a lot.
And you were at Cartoon Network when you were on, when you pitched Fairly Odd Parents?
When I was at Hanna-Barbera in the early 90s, it was bought by Turner Broadcasting. And Turner Broadcasting turned it into Cartoon Network. I'll never forget the day we all were asked to gather in the parking lot of Hanna-Barbera, which is now a 24-hour fitness in Cahuenga. There's a Stairmaster machine where my desk used to be, which is weird. But they gathered us all in the parking lot, and Ted Turner was there. And he was like, well, we're so excited that we bought the show, we bought Hanna-Barbera, and we're glad that, and he was out there saying we're going to turn it into Cartoon Network, and so he did. And some of the first, and then Fred Seibert came in, who was a producer, and he said, everybody in the studio, now's your chance, you can pitch us any show you want. Now, who'd be ready for an opportunity like that? Are you ready for an opportunity when it knocks on your door? Are you ready? Everybody, I meet people, I cannot tell you, David and I and Edie, we meet people constantly. I can't wait till so-and-so offers me this or this comes along. When the opportunity comes along, are you ready? Because that window of opportunity, I always say it's like a comet. Comets are really cool, but they don't come around very often. And it might be a very long time until you see another one. So make sure that you're ready for that opportunity when it comes along. And so when that opportunity was presented to all of us at the studio, a lot of us were ready. We just got it. Remember I told you I was creating cartoons when I finished my stuff? We were ready to pitch some cartoons. They weren't great, but it was a start. So we started making cartoons and started pitching them. I learned how to pitch cartoons, and I would do all the voices, and I would do, I worked with friends who couldn't do voices, so I would be able to do all the voices and everything. And so as time went on, I learned how to be a writer and a pitch guy. I learned how to it's communicating your idea that's the biggest issue when you are a show creator. It's communicating it clearly.
Do you remember your pitch for the Fairly Odd Parents?
I do. That one came along because I was working on a show called Johnny Bravo. Who's ever heard of Johnny Bravo? What's up, baby? Yeah, Johnny Bravo, right. Hey, baby. I was working on Johnny Bravo, and I got Johnny Bravo ended, and my job was over. I want to just do my own thing. So I sat and I said, I'm gonna make up my own show right now. And I sat there and I drew a little boy, because you kind of write what you know, right? I was a boy at one time, a little boy. So I drew this little boy, and I named him Timmy after my youngest brother. I have 3 brothers. I was gonna name him Mike after my other brother, but we had a fight that day. So I named him Timmy. And it's a true story. So I named him Timmy. And I'm like, I want to be able to move Timmy around real quick and take him different places and just move him all over the place. I'm going to give him a science show. But I couldn't do science because Dexter's Lab was already out. Remember Dexter's Lab? So remember, I always tell people this too, do your homework. You know, I couldn't do a science show because, you know, Cartoon Network already had a science show. So do your homework. When you're walking into a company like DreamWorks or whatever, look at what they already have that they're making. You know, I was at Nickelodeon once, and they had Ninja Turtles, Super Ninjas, Kung Fu Panda, and Avatar: The Last Airbender. What are the odds you're going to sell a karate show? I'm sure your karate show is awesome, but put it to the side and come up with another show. So I learned then, I was like, okay, I can't do science, I can do magic. So I said, I drew Timmy, and I was like, maybe I'll give him a magic friend. So I drew this girl named Wanda. I thought I'll make it like Cinderella, right? That'll be fun. And I'd never seen a fairy godfather before, so I drew Cosmo next to her. And I thought, oh, that's kind of funny. He's got, and he has these fairy godparents, and then maybe when the parents come in, they get turned into weird little objects like fish. So I drew a little fish bowl, and and I gave him a villain, an evil babysitter named Vicky, and that took about 15 minutes. The whole thing. And then I pitched it to Cartoon Network, and thank God they said no. And so and Fred Seibert called me because he had left Hanna-Barbera, went over to Nickelodeon. He goes, "You got any cartoons?" Opportunity. I said, as a matter of fact, I do. And I pitched that as 1 episode. And then it turned into 4, then 10, and then it turned into a series.
So when you're doing a project like that, do you have a sizzle? Do you have a little animation piece that you've done, or is it all storyboards, or how do you present it?
It was really hard to do animation at that time in the 90s to produce something animated. You'd have to get an actual movie camera and video cameras and all this. Now with your iPhone, you can make things so easily. But like back then, I had a storyboard, I had a script, I had drawings. And I had me, and it was like you walk into a room, you pin the board up, and you start pitching the show. And like, what's the show about? It's about this. How does that work? How does that work? Be prepared to answer questions. Everyone's going to have questions. If you have a great show, be ready to answer questions. If you want to pitch your show, rehearse it in front of your friends. You know, get up there. And if you're not good at pitching, get good. You know, it's like, well, I'm really nervous in front of people. Maybe pitching a show isn't for you. Maybe you should partner with somebody. But if you're going to partner with somebody, you need to have a what? A contract. I have to have a contract with my best friend? Oh yes. Oh yes. And I don't care if it's just, I agree to this, I agree to this. If it's that much, have a contract. Because when money shows up, everything changes. Big time. Yeah, but I'm a Christian. My friend's a Christian, they would never do that. Yeah, well, we'll talk about that too.
So when you sell a show to Nickelodeon, how do you stay in charge of the creative concept? You know, as a showrunner, you know, how much control do you really have after you sell a show?
It's kind of like what David said, you know, if you walk in there with confidence and you have somewhat of a track record. I had a little bit of a track record. I'd done some other shows, I'd directed, I'd moved up in certain things. I was a writer, I was an artist, writer, director. And when I walked in to pitch this show, I'd had a little bit of a track record. And plus, it's like, look, I'm going to be the showrunner because this is my passion. And I would like look at their work. Is this going? Oh my gosh! It says I'd look at directing things, and I look at all these things. I had to become like a one-man, you know, show. I had wonderful people working for me, but I had to make sure at the end of the day it was my rear end on the line if the show didn't do well. Because back in those days, right, it was all about ratings. Nickelodeon would put the show out on Friday night. I'll never forget. They were when they premiered my show. It was my show and Invader Zim. When was Invader Zim? Yeah, they premiered both shows the same night. And Nickelodeon had all their money on Invader Zim. And God bless Invader Zim, they're great people, but they'd already picked up another season of Invader Zim. They gave it 25 half hours. They gave me 6 half hours of Fairly Odd Parents. And when that show premiered, those shows premiered the same night, Zim was here and Fairly Odd Parents was here. My ratings went like this. And they finally went like this. Hey, who's that guy? And I'm like, hey, over here working hard, you know? And so then that opportunity came up. Can you know, we're going to give you more people, give you more money, you obviously, and so that's, again, that opportunity comes up.
Whenever I see Cosmo and Wanda, I always think of the Great Gazoo off of the Flintstones.
You know what's funny about that? When I was doing Fairly Odd Parents, I remember the Great Gazoo very well because he would always float up and down. So when I came up with Cosmo and Wanda, I made them float up and down exactly like the Great Gazoo.
Thank you. And do you also have a babysitter named Vicky?
I know, Vicky was kind of an amalgam of all the horrible babysitters I had. Yeah, she was quite kind of
And how about you? What was your favorite animated film?
As a kid?
Yeah.
I would probably say I really like Lady and the Tramp a lot. I just love the way it looks. I still to this day love the way it looks, and I love Peter Pan. Peter Pan. I based a lot of Danny Phantom flying stuff on Peter Pan, so I love Peter Pan. But Lady and the Tramp is one of my favorites because it just looks so beautiful, and it's so the personalities of those dogs are just so wonderfully done. I think it stands up to this day. And Spirit, the horse cartoon is a great cartoon. Spirit the horse. Is it called Spirit the Horse?
It is called
That's what I thought. The horse.
Not to be confused with the other
Stallion of the Cinema.
That's right.
That's it.
I love the film. What's the name of the film that everybody wants to be a cat?
Oh, that's Aristocats.
Aristocats.
Aristocats, yeah. Yeah, Aristocats was good.
Not the upcoming Cats with
No.
nobody wants to
Nobody wants to see that one. Well, all three of you are adults, supposedly, right?
What time is it?
So as an adult, how do you decide what's going to be entertaining for a kid? That seems like a stretch.
I try to, when we were doing Fairly Odd Parents and writing anything, we wrote all those shows I worked on at Nickelodeon. We always wrote what we liked. We write, this makes us laugh. It'll make a kid laugh. But we don't ever want to talk down to a kid. We don't ever want to go, and then, it's not like we're not writing preschool stuff. We're going to write stuff that we love. We're also going to do stuff that's not going to hopefully offend anybody, or I don't want to put bad stuff into the world either. I don't want to do racy things, or, I've been offered a lot of shows where it's like, Butch, you want to do an adult show with lots of sex in it and things like that, and really sell. It's like, just like you, Melissa turned down some jobs. I turn down stuff like that all the time. That's just not me. I don't put those other shows down. That's great they're doing that, but I just won't do that sort of thing. I'll do stuff I think is, I try and be wittier, as far as I try and come up with something witty as opposed to dirty, things like that. But I think you can really entertain kids with just some really great, clever stuff. Because kids are a lot smarter than we think they are.
One last question, and that is that we know that animation is expensive, and that there is a lot of faith films that are being done out there on an independent basis. Is it even possible to do a film today, or even a television series? It's been a number of years since VeggieTales has been out. Is that still possible to do that today, or is it too expensive?
It's totally possible. There's some things being developed right now, even some stuff that I'm working on, but it's totally possible. It just has to be entertaining. I'm glad people want to do faith-based things, and I'm a Christian, and I believe in it fully, but if it's not entertaining, no one's going to care. And it has to be entertaining, number one. That's why VeggieTales is so successful, because it's entertaining. Oh, and by the way, it has Bible stuff in it, so that's what's the best part. But if it's not entertaining, if we're faith-based people, that's amazing, but God gave us the ability to entertain people too, and let's reach out beyond the Christian audience as well. Let's get the rest of the world too. I think we should do that as well. So, I think it's possible for sure. If you look at Star Wars, Star Wars is like, use the Force. His dad's evil and then turns at the end, and and Luke is a Christ-like figure. Star Wars is a completely, allegorical thing for Christianity.
All right, we're going to open it up to questions now.
Great. Okay, so we're going to take a couple questions from the audience. Just raise your hand,
Really
and we'll
good
come to you. Really good questions.
Say that we have a pitch that we're ready to present. What is the right way to go about talking to the person to pitch to and get that meeting set up?
If you're just a creator and you're by yourself, the main thing to do, if you can, is get representation. Because most studios will never talk to you without representation. They just can't legally. Because many people get accused of quote-unquote stealing things and all this. So just to cover yourself and the studio, they will not see you unless you have representation. Hiding your representation. You get representation by going to workshops, you mingle, you meet people, you go out to places where the representation is. It's kind of a catch-22, but it's getting that representation, and you can get it.
If you have the representation.
If you have the representation, then it just comes down to having a good idea. Your rep has to look at your idea and think, okay, the rep has to know they can make money off of you. It all comes down to money. I hate to tell you, but that's what it comes down to. But it's like, can I make money off this? Great. And by the way, for example, if I was going to go in to pitch to DreamWorks, my rep's got to make sure I don't embarrass them. Like, I'm not going to come in there with some junky project and not know what I'm, act like a professional, be a professional, have a professional, get as professionally together as you can. And by the way, everyone's different. Someone's going to come in looking way different, but just go in like you look like you know what you're doing, because they're going to spend, like David said, tens of millions of dollars on you. And can they trust you? Because they don't want to have to worry about you. Once they say go, they want to move on to the next thing. You know, so be a professional and get representation if you can.
Hi, thank you all for your time tonight. This is a question coming from the voiceover perspective. I'm a voiceover talent. And my question is, how do you all, or whoever can answer this, decide who is the right voiceover talent for your projects? And for example, with the Happy Feet, you hired Pink to sing versus a voiceover talent who can sing. What comes down? What's the decision-making process when it comes down to deciding for your voiceover talent?
Well, in the case of Happy Feet, I'll just say that Judith Hill sang all of Pink's part. Pink had a hard time beating Judith Hill. I mean, because Judith killed it. It was kind of intimidating for Pink. But Pink was somebody that the network,
Pink is a name.
That's why Judith didn't do the final, but she sang all over it. But as for casting voiceover people, I only cast singers, not voiceover people, so that's...
I cast people, if I'm looking for a character, I audition. I just do straight up auditions. Back in the old days, you'd have people come into a studio and they'd be in front of you all day long. Now they can just send in their voice samples online, which saves a lot of time. But then I want to meet the person, get to know them again. Can I work with this person? Is this person a psychopath? Is this person going to ruin my life? Oh, and I use the word psychopath for real. I mean, I really use it. Yeah, so, I mean, but I mean that in a nice way. But I mean, is the person a nice person? Are they going to be able to pull off what I need them to do? And, you know, talent's one thing, but then again, the work ethic. You want to see if they can do it. And then, for Fairly Odd Parents, for example, I had 4 people, and they did every voice, because each one of them could do 20 voices. So, for a year, that show ran for 20 years, but I only used like 5 or 6 people, because they were so good, and very rarely would I bring an outside talent, unless it was like, a name or something like that, yeah. Or singers, yeah, exactly. I do voices myself, so I would call in an actor or actress, and they would say like this, I go, no, more like this, and I would do the voice for them, and then they would do it. They're like, why are you sitting there doing it? I'm like, I just don't want to be in there, right? I just don't. But then it's like, I would have Tara Strong come in, and she could not only do Timmy Turner's voice, she could sing as Timmy Turner. You know, then she could sing as another girl. I'd completely switch voices. You can't even tell it's the same person. So I know it's challenging. I know it's a big mountain to climb. But if you can climb that mountain, it's a very small group of people that do all the voices in Hollywood. If you get in that group, man, it's really, really.
Now, all 3 of you are adults, supposedly, right?
Well, what time is it?
Yeah. So as an adult, how do you decide what's going to be entertaining for a kid? That seems like a stretch.
I try to, when we were doing Fairly Odd Parents and writing anything, we wrote all those shows I worked on at Nickelodeon. We always wrote what we liked. We write, this makes us laugh. It'll make a kid laugh. But we don't ever want to talk down to a kid. We don't ever want to go, and then, it's not like we're not writing preschool stuff. We're going to write stuff that we love. We're also going to do stuff that's not going to hopefully offend anybody, or I don't want to put bad stuff into the world either. I don't want to do racy things, or, I've been offered a lot of shows where it's like, Butch, you want to do an adult show with lots of sex in it and things like that, and really sell. It's like, just like you, Melissa turned down some jobs. I turn down stuff like that all the time. That's just not me. I don't put those other shows down. That's great they're doing that, but I just won't do that sort of thing. I'll do stuff I think I try and be wittier, as far as I try and come up with something witty as opposed to dirty. Things like that. But I think you can really entertain kids with just some really great, clever stuff. Because kids are a lot smarter than we think they are. A lot smarter. A great thing.
Great. Well, thank you so much.